playing against a deck that has Punishing Fire and Grove of the Burned Willows, but I wouldn't be surprised if Marc won. Marc's really good at Magic, so we'll see what happens. So we're going to watch this in action here. We saw David Long, our first match to start the day, and now we're going to see him again. So this should be pretty fun here against Death and Taxes. We've seen that there's a lot of lands here in attendance this weekend.
Just the one copy making it into top 8. David Long was one of the only X2s to get into the top 8 here. Him and Fred Edelkamp, your 7 and 8 seeds.
Our quarterfinals are underway here between Konig and Long. Vile's going to start things off here for Marc. Now, do not forget, we do have premium coming for you guys, 3, 6, and 12 months throughout our elimination rounds. We'll ask our first question. When we do come back to the booth after game number 1, I will have the question, Matthias will have the rules. So you get those Twitters ready, my friends. We will watch things unfold here with the Thespian stage for David Long.
Yeah, Long, a veteran of lands as well. This is set up to be an excellent matchup. You see lands with those explosive starts. Turn 1, Life from the Loam off Mox Diamond. Lands one of the few decks that gets to actually play a Mox in Legacy.
So not a bad start here for David at all. See if Marc, as he takes up his Vile up to 1, can try to keep up here. He's got a lot of creatures in his deck. Just a couple of spells, 4 swords, and Umazawa's Jite, a sword of fire and ice, 1 Batter Skull, and then 4 copies of Vile. Wasteland's going to take care of the Thespian stage. A little dredge action here for the Loam. That'll turn over an Exploration, a Mox Diamond, and a fetch land.
Now, one thing that Death and Taxes can do in this matchup is, it's interesting. So lands is a deck that plays cards like Exploration and a lot of lands and Life from the Loam, but Death and Taxes actually can attack the lands of the lands deck. And Marc has a strategy that works pretty well with that. He has a turn 1 Aether Vial. Now David can't really blow that up, and Marc can deploy all his threats via Aether Vial and then use cards like Thalia, like Rishadan Port, like Wasteland to actually keep David off balance long enough to deal a lethal blow.
Vial's going to take up to 2. Mother of Runes did slide through the Vial on David's end step. There's a second land. Let's see what the follow-up's going to be. It looks like it's going to be a Spirit of the Labyrinth. Pass the turn back. Mother able to sit there and protect in case Punishing Fire does show up. So Long will have to decide if he wants to dredge or not. The answer looks like yes.
Yeah, Dredge actually works really favorably with Spirit of Labyrinth. It's a replacement effect, so David this doesn't count for his draw for the turn. So Spirit's mostly just going to be a 3-1 for 2 in this matchup, which, while not fantastic, still deals damage, which is really just what Marc needs his cards to do.
Yeah, it's a clock. That's good enough. Thespian stage along with a forest there in the graveyard. And I actually imagine, yeah, the question's actually being asked right now about, okay, Spirit of Labyrinth plus Dredge, how does that work? That is the question here. So if I dredge with Spirit of Labyrinth in play, does that count as my first card drawn for the turn? Or can I cycle my Tranquil Thicket, which David has in his hand, and still be able to draw a card? That is the question I imagine he asked the judge. And we will
Spirit
find
of the
out the
Labyrinth,
ruling.
one of the more confusing cards here.
Yep. There's a Loam. Get the forest in the stage back.
And what's interesting is the weapons that David has to stop aggro decks. And remember, lands is usually good against aggro decks. Are Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale, Maze of Ith, and what is it? He has those two. He has Glacial Chasm as well, so we can find any of these here.
Get a Batter Skull. So there's the powerful equipment. Whatever the biggest creatures that's in play for Marc, it's just going to be taken care of by Maze of Ith, as long as Maze of Ith is in play. Now, you did mention that Konig can't mess with his land, so you can port a Maze of Ith and still get damage through, or you can Wasteland one for a turn and get damage through.
So,
time to dredge alone.
I think the ruling here is that you can dredge up until the first draw of your turn, but once you hit the first draw of your turn and replace it, you cannot dredge after it, was the ruling that is given.
Cavern of Souls is going to name human here.
Right, so David, he's hoping to probably dredge into something like Punishing Fire.
And the problem, I mean, Mother of Runes is just going to be at the ready. Now, if he can start firing off Punishing Fire multiple times a turn, then he can get Mother of Runes off the table, or fire away at the Mother first, and then go after the Spirit or Stoneforge Mystic. There's a second Maze of Ith.
Yeah, but what I actually like from Koenig's side of this matchup is though David has his Life from the Loam engine going, he's still stuck on one land a turn. He doesn't have a mana bond or an exploration. So he's playing some pretty fair Magic despite having 2 Maze of Iths out.
And he's just trying to turtle up right now. That's the other thing too, is that he's just got to kind of hide behind this wall with Maze of Ith because he doesn't want to take a lot of damage. So Konig is going to put the Battered Skull in play. It's got a Germ token on it. You know the drill.
All right, so Marc having 3 creatures in play. Now those Maze of Iths are going to keep Spirit of the Labyrinth and Germ Token at bay. Some damage will push in 1 to be precise.
Yep. Go to Maze of Ith, the Battered Skull token, and Maze of Ith, the Spirit of the Labyrinth tokens. Spirit of the Labyrinth, excuse me, it's not a token. 1 damage is going to come across. And this is going to be the slow grind. 1 at a time.
When lands doesn't have an exploration, it can be a grind. But he's getting his combos together here. You see Punishing Fire and Grove of the Burn Willows milled there off that dredge. So
Time to loam.
he's going to start chipping away at those creatures.
And he finally dredged a Punishing Fire and picked up a copy of Grove of the Burn Willows. So now, if David can start to assemble lands, or if he starts taking a draw step to try to find Mana Bond, then he can actually go crazy. Because he's got a million lands in his hand. You can see his hand.
Just remember, this is even slower, though, than you would at first think. It's not just that Punishing Fire kills things. First, he has to Punishing Fire the Mother of Runes. And to do that, he's going to have to get Punishing Fire in his hand, Punishing Fire Mother of Runes on Koenig's end step, then she'll give protections from red, then Long will untap, rebuy the Punishing Fire, and recast it on Mother of Runes. And once he's done all of that, then he can start hitting Koenig's creatures.
Yep. Sacrifice Horizon Canopy. Draw a card. It's time for David to discard, so he will. Vial sticking it 2. Take a draw. Koenig with the beatdowns. 2 mazes, of course. 1 damage going to come through. And now it's a GT that probably, well, I guess there's a world where he can get counters, I guess.
Yeah, I think he'll put it on Stoneforge Mystic so that David will either have to give Koenig GT counters or let the Spirit of the Labyrinth hit him. It actually will up Koenig's damage by 2.
Turn over a couple more cards here with Loam. I don't know if David is looking to dredge into anything in particular yet. You know, because he's got plenty of lands in his hand, right? The thing that he's missing, kind of the missing piece of the puzzle, is that effect that lets him play multiple lands a turn, be it Exploration or be it Mana Bond.
Yeah, but you can't dredge into that. So he has most lands in his deck. I think what he wants to dredge into is the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale. That would be help clean up these creatures faster than Punishing Fire can.
Yeah, I think if I'm in his spot, it's just going to cycle a Tranquil Thicket, I think I just want to take a draw step to maybe run into a Gamble or an Exploration.
I thought we said he couldn't cycle Tranquil Thicket.
Just right there letting nothing.
All right. And you see he just wants the dredge because it basically lets him draw his lands. He's casting Life from the Loam and then discarding bunches of lands each turn.
There's a maze. There's a maze.
Yeah, so this time Long takes 3 off Spirit of the Labyrinth. You see he's still ever so slowly building up toward that Punishing Fire, Grove of the Burn Willows.
Revoker can't respond to this.
Revoker it can stop mana abilities, but it cannot name lands. But there is a card, David does have a Mox Diamond in play. He can take him off another mana. That's another turn.
Yep.
And the damage is adding up. Because of that GT, Long's taking 3 a turn. Now Revoker means he's taking 5 a turn. And he may need to find that Pendrell Vale, that Tabernacle, if he wants to survive.
He found a Glacial Chasm, which isn't so bad. It's a touch awkward, I suppose, but he can loam it back. I mean, Glacial Chasm is always a touch awkward, really, because it contorts the way that you play the game in a really big way.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the clock David's building up are his land drops. He can only make one per turn, so that's why he hasn't gotten Punishing Fire online yet. You're right, he can stop the bleeding with Glacial Chasm, and he might even do it, but it's going to cost him a land drop, which that's his limiting resource right now.
He might have to do something like play the Chasm and sacrifice Maze of Ith, just because, Maze of Ith is providing him protection from creatures. Chasm will provide him the same protection. It's not a land that taps for mana. Here's a Taiga, so I understand the concern, and it's a very real one. Cycle the thicket.
So right, he has to sack the land for the Glacial Chasm. On top of that, he ends up losing the Chasm. That does take a lot of lands to play that card. It's possible he just goes for a 20/20 and says, okay, well, maybe I'll just make that.
Yeah.
He's a Dark Depths away.
Discard a couple cards.
Question for Long will be how to not take damage. He has had free reign of dredging here.
Draw a card.
This is such an interesting matchup. Both these decks are kind of at their core these resource denial decks, and they're doing it on different axes, so it's interesting kind of to see just what actually gets to work in this matchup.
Yeah, the Death and Taxes deck does it with lands a little bit and then creatures, and then lands does it obviously with lands. That's how they stop you from doing things. They're both prison decks in a weird way. It's
Right.
weird to call a creature deck a prison deck, but that's what this is.
Yeah, and you can see things like that happen. If Marc gets a Thalia here, that would be a real big thorn in David's side.
Yeah, it would just be another annoyance in a list full of annoyances, right? I mean, but that's what this deck
Right.
does.
David down. He's taking 5 a turn. That last turn was 15 down to 10. It's a 2-turn clock, sort of. Remember that Mox Diamond doesn't make mana yet. David has to, if he wants to get back Punishing Fire, he'd have to not cast Loam. So far he's been on the plan where instead of ever trying to set up Punishing Fire and casting them, he's continuing to cast Loam. I'm assuming looking for maybe more Maze of Iths, a Tabernacle, things like that.
It was an update that came a little bit faster than I expected. Ben Friedman won game 1.
Yeah, so Thomas Flatcheck down a game here. Remember, he is also on Miracles, and Friedman kind of, no slouch player of his own. He's has a runner-up finish at the Invitational as well as a lot of quality finishes on the Pro Tour.
Yeah. I know he walks around with his goofy hats and his sleeveless shirts, but when he's at the table, he can play Magic.
I don't know if I've ever seen him wear sleeves. He's gotten, even when he's been on teams which give him T-shirts, he cuts the sleeves off them.
He plays one way. He knows what he likes. Dredge again. Aha!
Well, this is big. He's found his one-of copy of Tabernacle. And
there's the Chasm.
yeah, I guess the Tabernacle makes him feel safe enough to sacrifice a Maze of Ith. Chasm certainly will stop him from taking damage for a while.
Yeah, he can set up the Tabernacle in the next turn. That might be his big plan. Sit behind the Chasm for as long as he reasonably can.
Well, here's the danger, and it would be a really intelligent play from Marc if he did it. If Marc has a copy of Wasteland and has just been hiding it in his hand, hoping David plays Glacial Chasm, he's going to blow David out of the water here. If he just untaps and says, oh, by the way, Wasteland your Glacial Chasm, attack you with my creatures, it's all sorts of bad for David.
Vile's going to take up to 1. Other one will stay at... He's going up to 3. And I like going up to 3 because I believe Flicker Wisp will provide him with an out in this situation as well.
Yeah, Flicker Wisp also takes care of the Glacial Chasm. He really only needs to get rid of it for a turn. See Marc now dropping extra lands. He sees that Tabernacle on its way. And looks like no answer for Chasm just yet.
Take 2. Down to 8.
David's going to start to put a strain on Marc's lands. Thanks to Aether Vial, he doesn't actually need his lands, so he can pay for almost all of his creatures. He'll have to let one go if David makes the Tabernacle.
Yep.
And now there's a balancing act between David here. He can try to prison Marc out. He can, get some Maze of Iths back, get Tabernacle back, start playing them one at a time. Or he can continue to dredge and maybe just try to find that Dark Depths. Spirit of the Labyrinth is actually doing a real good job here in that it's not letting David dredge. Like, David would love to play actual spells and dredge at the same time and use Tranquil Thicket to get an extra draw and, go through his deck a lot faster. Spirited Labyrinth isn't having any of that.
Well, it looks like we are having a judge intervene here to see exactly what is going on. So we're going to come back to the booth, and when we do have a ruling for you guys on exactly what's going on, we'll let you know, but no reason to stare there at a game state
Sure.
with a bunch of lands and a bunch of creatures and nothing happening. So Senator Phillips and Thias Hunt back here in the booth for you guys. Our backup match, Ben Friedman, is up a game here with his Jeskai Stoneblade deck that does have Counterbalance and Top in it. No update for you guys on Joe Lissette versus Ryan Macedo, which is probably good for Joe.
If the game's going this late, in fact, doesn't do very well past turn 7.
Yeah.
Really,
So,
past turn 5 even.
if things are taking this long, this is probably good for Joe. And then for Fred Edelkamp and Will Partial, well, that's Jeskai Stoneblade versus Infect. That was actually, Jeskai Stoneblade versus Blue Red Delver. That's a matchup that we saw quite a bit at the Grand Prix. I still think it does favor Edelkamp, but he is on the draw for game 1. So
Sure.
those games aren't too short. They take a little while. There's back and forth and jockeying for position.
Yeah, I mean, the long game still favors Fred. He's certainly the control deck in that matchup. Stoneblade is definitely, trying to stop these early attack of Monastery Swift Spear style, Delver Secret style cards. But you're absolutely right. Interestingly, let's go back to the match we're watching here. This Death and Taxes versus Lands matchup.
Okay.
And so Death and Taxes, we kind of said we didn't really like its position in the top 8 here. There were a lot of, the decks that normally preys on, I guess, your more traditional Stoneblade style decks, your Delver style decks, maybe your show and tell style decks. It doesn't seem to be too much of that in the top 8, which makes you wonder what he was playing against to get to this point.
Okay. The judge call right now is about cycling with Spirit. This is a lot of fun. Cycling with Spirited Labyrinth in play after you dredge. So
Right.
you dredge for your draw step. He's dredging alone, Miss David, because that's what his deck does. And then cycling Tranquil Thicket and drawing a card versus dredging, because dredging is a replacement effect, and drawing a card when Spirit is in play.
Can be tricky.
Yeah, so we're getting a ruling on this. Looks like we're heading back to the match right now, so we see some dredging taking place, and we'll see if we can get a confirmed ruling on what did happen. As clearly this is a bit complicated. This isn't something that comes up very often.
No, definitely not. It's not an interaction unless really the Spirit of the Labyrinth is a pretty new card, so unless you play Death and Taxes versus Lands, there wouldn't be a reason for this one to come up. Most rule of law style effects. That's actually casting a card per turn. No drawing of extra cards per turn isn't a common effect in Magic.
Yeah.
There aren't many cards that do that.
It is it's a touch confusing. It doesn't surprise me. So,
On the surface, Spirit of the Labyrinth makes a bunch of sense. Its ability is pretty simple. It's when you start introducing older things, like the dredge mechanic, where questions really do start coming up.
yeah. Well, got an update for you guys on Edelkamp versus Partial, 2 versus 7. They're going to game 3. So, Jeskai Stoneblade, what? Excuse me?
Yeah. And so we saw the Joe Lissette versus Ryan Macedo matchup finally finishing game 1, which that's got to be good for Mr.
All
Lissette.
right, Joe won game 1. I mean, he's really good at playing miracles, so I guess I shouldn't be that surprised, but the matchup was so bad.
It's tough.
Jeez. All right, so the ruling, we've
All
got
right.
it. So Dredge replaces the draw step, and so he can cycle, and that will be his first draw step for the turn.
Okay, because he didn't actually ever draw a card. A draw never occurred.
Correct.
So in a way, you could say that Spirit of the Labyrinth doesn't do too much against the dredge mechanic.
Yes, but it does beat down for 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's still been a 3-1, and that's mattered here. Don't get me wrong.
So there we go, the beats.
Go back to our game.
What's he gonna violin here? 2 mana spell. Wouldn't be surprised if it's like a mystic or something. Yeah. Search for another equipment.
Yeah, and he already has his Batterskull and his Stoneforge Mystic. He does have 1 equipment left. It's a copy of Sword of Fire and Ice. And while the abilities aren't particularly strong, I mean, he's using these equipment to make all his creatures of roughly the same threat, because that way, when David Long lets one of them through, thanks to these Mazaviths, it really punishes him for doing it.
Yeah, right now, no damage is gonna come across because he's got the chasm out there, so that's playing the role of protection at this point. But if he's ever able to do this, right, if he's ever able to make him lose the Glacial Chasm, and get him in a sticky situation, the mazes won't save him. That's the big plan here. So if he's ever able, or if he's able to draw a Flicker Wisp or a Wasteland too, to get out from underneath the chasm, then, he can attack in such a way that he can torch the way that David plays, and he's able to force through enough damage. That's all that Konig can do now.
Right.
Because Lance is setting up shop and trying to set up the prison.
You see Long cycling a Tranquil Thicket. Just drawing the card, not replacing his draws here.
Yeah, that was end of turn. Again, I still think if he can find Exploration or if he can find Mana Bond, then it's like almost impossible for him to lose, because he's going to move up the H counter there and take some more damage.
Goes down to 4. And you're absolutely right. Once he can start getting extra lands in play, then this Glacial Chasm can just keep coming back, and then we'll get suddenly more Mazaviths will start appearing, and things will get real bad. But
And turn over a couple more cards, Dark Depths among them.
yeah, and he actually hadn't found a Dark Depths up to this point, which is pretty crazy when you consider there's 3 of them in the deck, and you see that L-shaped graveyard starting at the deck and working its way across most of the table.
It's time to loam again. Dark Depths is one of the options, Tranquil Thicket, and looks like Wasteland.
Now, Konig, I believe, does have 1 copy of Swords to Plowshares in his hand. So if David makes a 20/20, he's going to have to restart all over making land drops. Now, he'll get 20 life, so it won't be all for nothing.
Yeah, the Glacial Chasm, boy, 20 more life. Don't mind if I do.
Oh, how many more turns of Glacial Chasm is that? He does have to know that this Glacial Chasm shield he's behind, though, is not bulletproof. There's Flicker Wisps, 4 of them, I believe.
Yep.
In Kunig's deck, he has 3 more Wastelands.
Those look to be his only outs to that, but those are good.
Those
So,
are just fine as far as outs go.
Dark Depths is going to come into play. You see it side by side with the stage. Koenig going to get on tap. Take a draw.
David has 2 untapped mana. That sets him up to go for Merit Lage this turn.
Oops.
And just kidding. Now Koenig shows his hand a bit. It is a Caracas. That's not going to be too much of a threat. David does have Wastelands.
Yep. Actually has one in play right now. Cycle the Tranquil Thicket. Draw a card. Time to untap. So no 20/20 just yet. David's got to move around all these lands.
Yeah, he's valuing this card draw really highly. He could have gone for Merit Lage on his tip there, but then Marc just would have bounced it. So that doesn't work. He's going to have to wait a turn so he can first get rid of this Caracas.
Nice play there by David with the Glacial Chasm on the stack. He Thespian staged it. So stage is now a chasm.
So he doesn't have to use a land drop to get another Glacial Chasm.
Yep. Stage is a huge, huge card for this deck. Speaking of which, another one.
Yeah, this one's the one that he has set up for Dark Depths.
But he's still got to deal with the Caracas, and he's used the Wasteland already. So what's interesting about this is, this board state is very, very complicated, of course, for both players here. How many times have these players been here in these situations? I imagine that David Long has played against Death and Taxes a couple of times. I'm not sure how many times Koenig has played against lands, because it's not that popular of a deck in Europe. So speaking with the Europeans that came over here, they said, there's a lot more lands here in the States than we see in Europe. And I'm
this
like,
is a lot more lands than we see anywhere.
yeah, this is the most lands we've seen in a tournament, guys. It's kind of new to us, too.
I do love how Legacy still has those regional differences that you can see. Death and Taxes, up until recently, was a deck that was far more popular in Europe than it was in the States.
Yeah.
The U.S. had a lot of Stoneforge decks that caught on here a lot more. Stoneforge and Delver, really.
Yeah, stage is a forest now. The other stage, of course.
One stage is a Glacial Chasm. David Long's going to go down to 2. These lands players bold with their life totals.
Yeah, well, got to do what you got to do, I guess.
It's only the last point that matters.
He could be a 22 in a minute, right?
Yeah.
If he makes a Dark Depths token. It's possible. I'm just trying to figure out, David's having a heck of a time kind of making up ground and just trying to figure out a way to win, Like right now he's just trying not to die, but how's he going to turn the corner? How's he going to win the game?
Well, I think he has to set up for Merit Lage, but you're right, he's just a little low on life right now.
Going to loan these back.
He has to make a Merit Lage pretty quickly because he's going to have to let this Glacial Chasm go.
Yep.
And he's going to have to keep making Glacial Chasms. He needs to get an Exploration or a Mana Bond. One land a turn isn't going to cut it. And remember, this whole time, if Koenig top decks one of these 7 cards, these 3 remaining Wastelands, or one of the 4 Flicker Wisps, then Koenig just gets it.
Yep.
So I guess all things considered, though he seems not in control, I like Konig right now.
Time to draw a card for the turn. Now he's going to cast Loam. There it is. Going to get Chasm back.
Yeah, well, he's got to set up because next turn he has to let that Glacial Chasm, the Thespian Stage Glacial Chasm, that is, he's going to have to let that go. In fact, he's going to have to play Glacial Chasm every turn, which means he's going to start losing lands. So he really needs exploration, and maybe even more than one.
There's another stage. He can do like a weird stage loop.
Yeah. Well, exploration, if you look at actually his graveyard, I'm kind of checking on exploration counts. We have 1, 2, 3. It looks like 3 explorations in the graveyard.
There's only 1 Mana Bond right now, I believe. I mean, that's the card I want. Mana Bond lets me go crazy. Exploration is fine. 2 lands a turn is obviously good. But
Yeah.
If I'm in David's seat, I want Mana Bond. I want to be able to just, dredge Loam, cycle Tranquil Thicket, get some more lands, kind of go crazy. Be able to present, Chasm plus Dark Depths plus something just every single turn. I think that's what he needs to be able to do. Is there's a Mother of Runes. Pass the turn back. Well, Marc.
And that all but turns off all the punishing fires
Yeah,
at this
it's
point.
basically over.
They're gone.
Wasteland's going to take care of Caracas.
Well, I think Long, he's a land short right now. I was going to say he maybe is getting rid of Caracas to build up toward Merit Lage. Yeah, no, he has the Merit Lage right now.
Yeah, no, he can do it right now. So he's going to make a 2020.
And he actually does a really good job here. He turns the Glacial Chasm with into Dark Depths, so he actually doesn't have to pay that cumulative upkeep and sacrifice the land, and then he has a different one. So he nets himself a land there by using that one, by using that Thespian Stage.
Yeah, and that's super important too, because he needs Chasm to be off the board anyway, because he can't attack if it's in play due to the text on the card. So he needs that thing to not be there.
Makes a Merit Lage token.
So he will be attacking. I mean, we're on his upkeep right now.
Yeah. Konig does have a Swords to Plowshare's Hand, but he's got to be pretty unhappy with the prospect of David gaining 20 life. David making Merit Lage just in time. And remember, it won't take very long for David to reload and do it again, which really means after this happens, after David gains 20 here, Koenig's going to need that Wasteland or Flicker Wisp relatively quickly.
3 cards over. So many cards.
So much great. It's like you're watching Dredge, but you're not.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Normally, you only see Dredge players do this.
Oh, these silly graveyard decks. More lands in his yard. I mean, at this point, I think all his silver bullets are in the graveyard. So he's just dredging to get life from the Loams in his hand. It's not like he's looking for any cards to mill anymore. He did mill another Mana Bond there.
There's a Sarah Avenger.
And this is so much better for Marc.
Yep.
He didn't have to Swords the Merit Lage. Instead, he gets to block it with Sarah Avenger and give it protection from black.
Yeah, this is a million times better.
And a heads-up move here from Marc Koenig, not showing his hand that he had the Sarah Avenger until David tried to hit him with a 2020.
Yeah, no reason to, right?
Well, you think he would because he was playing Mother of Runes. If you're David, you're thinking, oh, Marc's just playing his creatures as he draws them. But no, he had a trick up his sleeve here.
He's not undefeated on #1 overall seed on accident, I'll tell you that much. He knows what he's trying to accomplish. And to be fair, so does David. He put a Glacial Chasm back out there, but his lands just continue to whittle away. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them out there to tap for mana. Mox Diamond's off because of the Revoker.
Well, one thing is he hasn't gotten a Mana Bond or an Exploration in play yet, and even if he gets one, there's a little bit of concern that he can only dredge life from the Loams so many more times because his deck is going to run out of cards. And if you can't flip 3 cards off the top of your deck, you can't dredge life from the Loam.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that he will now. I don't think that we're going to see Exploration or Mana Bond come into play anymore. I mean, Mana Bond's gone. There's only 2 in the deck, but
yeah.
I think that ship has basically sailed.
So if that's the case, then how does he win from here?
That's the problem.
like Tabernacle.
Flicker Wisp finally.
Yeah. Flicker Wisp. Finally, Konig gets one. It's going to take out the Glacial Chasm. And without this divide,
Well, he's got. I think
he
he's going to
can
copy
stage it.
Yeah. He has to.
yeah, he'll copy Glacial Chasm. That does mean that David's going to, unfortunately for him, have 2 Glacial Chasms in play when that that chasm comes back. So he'll have to pay 2 cumulative upkeeps. Meaning he'll lose 2 lands because he can't pay for either of them.
So I think Marc may have thought, well, yes, finally Flicker Wisp. I win. Not quite yet. That's going to come back into play. He's got to sacrifice a land when it comes into play.
Oh, brutal. Well, it can sacrifice itself.
Yeah.
Which, well, he's going to have to sacrifice it anyway. Or he can sacrifice that other Thespian stage that's a Glacial Chasm.
Yep.
So he loses 2 lands, I think, both ways.
It's bad news. He just keeps whittling away his lands. Because now it's okay, would you like to pay the cumulative upkeep, sir?
And the story of this game really has been just David only being limited to playing 1 land per turn, has never been able to stabilize.
So now he's going to stage.
To copy another Glacial Chasm?
Yeah, so the stage has a Glacial Chasm. Now I'm actually going to stage over here. Yes.
What's the end game here?
I have no clue.
I think he just visually put a different stage in the graveyard. This stage is now the one that's tapped is now a new Glacial Chasm. In case you're wondering why that one is still there.
But, you mentioned the problem, right? Which is just, look, like, the lands just keep whittling away. Where's he trying to get to? Yes, he has a 2020 play. The 2020 doesn't do anything. Now he's got to take a draw step.
He has 1 exploration left in his deck. Maybe if he can play that, he can start treading water. But even with 1 exploration, I think because he needs Glacial Chasm in play every single turn, he's never going to get more lands. Right now he's losing a land per turn, and he'll break even at some point. But that's not good enough.
Another stage comes in.
So with the 2 stages, he can actually, he can keep replaying. He can tread water here, right? He can keep 5 lands on the table.
He's been treading water for like 10 turns.
Right. Eventually he'll deck, though.
Yeah. You can't tread water forever, right?
Right.
Eventually you lose to a different thing.
Eventually you drown in a sea of white creatures.
Yeah. Konig going to draw a card. There's a port, which is probably better than we think. What's this 5-mana spell? Maybe no 5-mana spell at all.
Port will be an inconvenience, especially as Dave gets lower and lower on lands. And what a game here. It's been a struggle for David Long. He felt like he was kind of in control, but never stabilized. And slowly just, I always kept expecting him to turn the corner, right? Like, okay, he's got all his pieces, or most of his pieces. His deck's doing what it's supposed to be doing, but he never doesn't feel safe yet. But just this one more piece, and then David will start stabilizing. But he always was 1 piece away, and then he started running out of cards.
Yeah, the problem is that the piece that he's always been away from the entire time has been having an additional way to put lands into play. That's been the problem the entire time.
Right, and it's been interesting because he's been dredging, so you have to think that was part of the plan. He was trying to dredge as little as possible. You saw him actually draw cards off the top of his deck frequently this game. But every time he started drawing cards naturally, Marc would put enough pressure on him to force him to dredge again.
Yeah, now that the port's shown up, now it's going to tap that down. Thespian stage copied the Thespian stage that was a Glacial Chasm, and I just don't think David can get anywhere.
No, Mox Diamond doesn't make mana.
And it's shut down by Revoker. I don't know if he can get anywhere.
Merit Lage could get Trample. That would help.
Is there a Shizo? Does anyone
get
have a Shizo? Well.
Right on time.
It's
exploration.
It's finally here.
But because David played the exploration this turn and not Thespian stage, he's gonna... Well, I was going to say he's going to be down on Glacial Chasms.
Now we're going to do the count of the deck.
It looks like it's in single digits.
Yeah.
So David gets 1 good life from the loam. He's going to have to sacrifice that Thespian stage next turn. He's going to have to loam back Glacial Chasm, because he's actually playing a real Glacial Chasm and not copying it, that means you have to sack a land. So getting his extra land into play, let's...
Yeah, he only has 7 cards left in his deck.
I mean, he's going to have to dredge next turn.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily. He has a loam in his hand, actually. So maybe he doesn't have to dredge just yet. He can just cast them from his hand, get back some chasms, maybe a Thespian Stage, maybe not be completely dead.
A Flicker Wisp. Is it good this time?
Or this time, Marc can just draw another Flicker Wisp, and there you go.
Attack with everybody.
Puts to David holding on. And finally, Marc lets him off the hook.
Marc Konig is going to win game number 1 here over David Long. Death and Taxes in a marathon game number 1 takes down lands. We'll be getting to their sideboards in just a moment, but it is trivia time. He's got the rules. I've got your 3-month question.
All right, so trivia is the same as it worked this morning in the standard top 8, but if you're just joining us, you have a chance to win 3 months of Star City Games Premium. So how this works is, first of all, you got to get on Twitter. So if you have a Twitter handle, make sure you have one. Cedric will ask you a question, and if you believe you know the answer to it, send us a tweet and make sure you have this hashtag SCG Premium that you can see here on your tweet. At the end of all of our top 8 matches, one of the correct answers will randomly be selected to win 3 months of Star City Games Premium. Make sure you're following us. That's at SCG Live. Have the hashtag at the bottom of the screen, SCG Premium, on your tweet. And after our last match is done, we'll announce a winner.
All right, my friends, we got ourselves a Death and Taxes here by Marc Konig. He's got 3 pieces of equipment. 2 of them are very obvious in Batterskull and Wazawa's GT. The last one, sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. It's a popular sideboard card, I think, in this format to be True Name Nemesis. Name that 3rd piece of equipment that Konig does have to search for at Stoneforge Mystic. If you can, use the hashtag of SCG Premium. Make sure you're following at SCG Live, and we will announce the winner at the conclusion of our quarterfinal rounds. We will head back down to the match, take a look at the sideboards here, and you will see on David Long's sides a Chalice, a Pithy Needle, 4 Sphere of Resistance, a Thorn, a Seismic Assault, a Crop Rotation, 4 copies of Crow's Grip, an additional Dark Depths, and a Bajuka Bog. What do we like there, Matthias?
Well, it's a creature matchup, so this in theory is something the lands likes. He doesn't have too much sideboard for this, as most of his sideboard is devoted to hating out combo decks. That said, the Seismic Assault in his sideboard is pretty excellent against a deck full of 2/1s. So imagine he'll bring that one in. Pithing Needle, I think he'll want to use because actually Aether Vial is problematic for his deck. Remember, both these players are kind of trying to go after the other guy's lands, and when Death and Taxes has a turn on Aether Vial, like you saw that game, they can be much more free with their mana. So I think he'll want Pithing Needle to turn off Aether Vial. He may want some amount of artifact destruction, like one of the Croson Grips, to get rid of Aether Vial, but I don't think he wants to get away from his main deck game plan too much. You may also see the 4th crop rotation. Some of the lands are pretty good here against creatures. It's just another way to find, say, the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale.
A Cage, a Needle, a Ratchet Bomb, 2 copies of either Sworn Canonist, a Containment Priest, an Absolute Law. Oh, wow, what a hater. A Cop Red.
And Absolute Law, oh man.
A Rest in Peace, 2 Enlightened Tutors for the small engine, 2 copies of Gutshot, a Cataclysm, and a copy of Council's Judgment. The first one I like the most is Cataclysm, since it kind of plays the role of Armageddon in this matchup.
Cataclysm destroys all the lands. You have to like that one there, but you don't want to underestimate just how good this Enlightened Tutor package is. Rest in Peace is a huge problem for the lands deck. So 2 Enlightened Tutor, 1 Rest in Peace, almost certainly coming out of Konig's sideboard. And actually, because of that, Long will probably, remember, they have access to each other's deck lists, so he'll probably board in a higher number of Croson Grip than he may otherwise.
I actually like Ratchet Bomb in this matchup too. Because we talked about that entire game about how it was important for David to have an Exploration or a Mana Bond, and Ratchet Bomb is a way to get one of those off the table. And there are enough cards here for Marc to be able to board out. I think the 4 Swords to Plowshares are really bad.
Yeah, he doesn't need all these pieces of equipment at all. Swords to Plowshares is not particularly great. He had a main deck Containment Priest. He might even keep that in just because it's a creature.
Yeah.
But some of his disruptive cards don't really do a great job here, so he should be able to find things to board out.
Yeah, I think he can chop away at some of those things and move forward accordingly. So we'll say he likes a sideboard here as we do get ready for game number 2. Got other matches still in progress. Joe Lissette with Miracles. He's up a game right now over Ryan Macedo playing In Fact. That's our 3 versus 6. Will Partial is announced the winner. He does take down Fred Edelkamp, so Blue-Red Delver is moving on to play the winner of Lissette and Macedo. And then we've got Jeskai versus Miracles. Ben Friedman currently up a game right now over Tomas Viacek.
Yeah, so Will Partial there, Blue-Red Delver defeating Fred Edelkamp's Jeskai Stoneblade deck. Number 2 seed moves on. What thought might have been a little bit of an upset there for Partial.
I think that's an upset. I thought that Edelkamp would be able to get that one. I just think it's a pretty good matchup for Jeskai Stoneblade against Blue-Red Delver, but maybe upset City. Well, Joe Lissette, you are very good at Magic. So I think everybody knew that, though. Maybe.
Not the result we expected, but 2-0, Joe Lissette moves on to the semifinals. He will face Will Partial here. Remember, Lissette on Miracles.
Took down Infect. That is really good, man. That is really good. Exploration to start things off here for David Long off a Rising Canopy, along with a Wasteland. So David is at 19 right now. For Konig, Mother of Runes and a Plains. There's a Forest for Long, perhaps a Loam. Yes, sir.
These are the hands that you don't ever want to see from the lands deck when they have an Exploration or Mana Bond with Life from the Loam in the opener on the play. The deck can be fiendishly hard to beat.
Plains.
And
Oof.
Konig with the answer here. This is a 1-of Rest in Peace out of the sideboard. Just has it in his hand, and he nabs the Life from the Loam right out of Long's graveyard before he even gets a dredge in.
Well, time to go find a Crows and Grip.
This can shut down his entire strategy.
Yep. Just going to pass the turn back now.
Things got a lot harder. Might see him sacrifice this Horizon Canopy. He has 4 copies of Crows and Grip in his sideboard. He's going to have to find one.
Absolute Law. Well, Punishing Fire, that's... I like this. We're playing like an Enchantress deck now, kind of.
Absolute Law is something you don't see too often.
Oh,
This
look at
card,
this. Look at these beatdowns.
well, what's Mother of Runes protecting from anymore? This card, if you've never played Urza's Saga Draft, we actually talked about this before. This is... Goodness, what an uncommon this card is.
Well, that's timely. That Crows and Grip, that's really, really important for David, so...
He gets to play.
Yeah.
He Crows and Grips the Rest in Peace. There are no more copies of Rest in Peace in Konig's deck, and he doesn't have a way to get back enchantments. So now that the one Rest in Peace has been taken care of, Long can start over, and you see he just has another Life from the Loam in his hand.
Well, that's good. Cavern on a Human there for Konig last turn before he did pass the turn back. Long's going to try to get that Dredge Engine back online. So there is Life from the Loam and just passing the turn back. It's a slow start for really both players here. Just a Mother of Runes as far as creatures are concerned here for Marc. See what he's got to play this turn, though.
Well, I think Marc put a lot of stock in that Rest in Peace in his opening hand, and rightfully so. The card, it's his best card in the deck for the matchup. And now it's been taken care of. He's going to have to start to put a bit of a clock on David, but he may be able to get David back to where we were last game. You see Council's Judgment taking care of Exploration.
I like that play a lot. Get that thing off the table. Make him play a fair game, or at least as close to fair as his deck can play. There's a Dredge with Gamble, Crop Rotation, and Maze of Ith.
Well, it's really interesting here. So Long is on 1 land per turn right now, which, as we saw last game, is not always enough. Not to mention his Punishing Fires are all turned off for the time being by Absolute Law. So if he's just dredging each turn, he's not necessarily getting anywhere, at least not for a while.
Attack you. Maze it.
Hello.
That's a good try. It's a good try.
Untap Mother Runes. Maybe he didn't see it.
Yeah, no, it's good.
It is correct.
Of course it's correct. It's a freebie. You get that free point of damage, or you get to use your Mother of Runes. Manas. 4 of them.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Cataclysm time or not.
What Konig needs here, a reset button would be great. A threat would be good too.
Yeah.
Mother of Runes is not doing a great job there. And I think that is it. I believe that is the Cataclysm you mentioned.
No.
And this is a 1-of that's known out of the Death and Taxes deck, but boy, can it do a number.
This is one of my favorite cards of all time. I'm a big Armageddon fan already, but I don't pass this card when I cube very much because it's really good. It also kills Planeswalkers, which is nice, though there aren't any in play. And it's just really, really good in this deck. You see what Marc is able to leave behind, which are a land, a creature, an enchantment. Doesn't have an artifact in play. If he had an equipment, he'd be able to keep it. Now he can follow up by playing a port and start to lock you up.
Each player gets 1 of each card type. Creature, enchantment, artifact, land. Konig gets to keep his Absolute Law, Mother of Runes, and Plains, Long down to just a forest. Does he have a second land in his hand? That's going to be real important.
He has an Exploration. We'll deploy that before passing the turn back.
And Konig is doing a great job of keeping Long off balance here.
And this is just what Death and Taxes does, you know?
Yeah, and it was interesting there. So Long valued the exploration enough. He could have played Thespians. Well, he didn't have. You're right. He didn't have Loam in his hand yet. So he's going to dredge Loam. Konig can keep Long off of Life from the Loam at least until David Long draws another land, which is probably one turn, considering how many lands the deck plays.
Yeah, the question is, does Long have another green source of mana?
That's a much harder thing for the deck to produce.
And the answer is no.
No, not yet. Marc not doing too much damage in the meantime.
There's oof.
And now he's got, that was a pretty timely wasteland. So he's got Long down to 0 mana. Long's going to have to draw a green and a colorless naturally off the top of the deck. Once he does, he can start loaming, and then it's off to the races.
Now there's Revoker. Jeez.
Well, a great, actually, this is a really neat play by Marc here. He's really hoping, he needed more of a clock, right?
Yep.
So he took one turn off to play a second creature and says, okay, if David draws a colorless land here, that's fine. You can port him off the green. He won't get to loam this turn. And now the port, it's back on probably always porting Long time.
Yep. I like, yeah, because he can just do 3 a turn and just port you all the way and make it so he doesn't get to do anything, really.
And as awkward as it is, the lands player getting land screwed. He finally hit a land this turn, but it's Dark Depths. It doesn't even tap for mana.
David does have a copy of Mox Shaman in his hand, too. But Revoker says absolutely not.
And it seems like, once again, the Death and Taxes deck just has him off balance at every turn.
This is just the most classic Death and Taxes game ever where, you know...
It's like, how are you winning? You're
Yeah.
just beating him up with 1/1s.
Yeah, and the last game, too. It's just, well, you know, you just can't beat me, Lands deck. Like, you've got to cast Life in the Loam 8, 9, 10 times. I don't really care.
And the cool part about Death and Taxes is none of them are hard locks. They're all just these combination of lots of... It's like a combination of inconveniences that they just build up and eventually just... Nothing ever seems to work quite right.
Yeah, it is just a million soft locks
Yeah.
that are just, like, super annoying. That's what the entire deck is. Port your forest. Pass.
He has Long down to 8. And Long, you know, drawing Punishing Fire. Okay, wait, nope, Absolute Law.
Yep. This deck is just the king of the soft lock.
Well, it's not even like Konig is doing much here. He played a 1/1 for 1 and a 2/1 for 2, and he's turning them sideways and spending his entire turn tapping Reshit and ports.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, it's not like Marc's doing anything with his draws either. But he's got this 1/1 in play, so he's ahead.
The second port is insane, especially if he draws another land. That it's just, you know, the hammer lock. But he's going to put him down to 2. It might just be the hammer lock anyway, truthfully. Yeah, it just doesn't even bother. I'm not casting other spells. Just port you again. You can Punishing Fire me if you'd like, but you can't Punishing Fire any of my stuff.
Yeah, so he's going to port him on upkeep.
Yep. Nope. I think he was trying to tap mana, cast Punishing Fire, but Absolute Law says all my creatures have protection from that.
Yes, he's Seismic Assault in his hand. There's, you know, Long I think is thinking if he can dredge into Glacial Chasm, then he could play a land, play Glacial Chasm, but that doesn't even work because he's not going to draw a land. He's going to draw Life from the Loam.
Yeah, just some roundabout way. There's a gamble.
He could gamble for Glacial Chasm and hope to hit it. Does that get him anywhere, though?
No.
He can't gamble for Maze of Ith because then Rashad and Port will tap the Maze of Ith.
Yeah. Gamble for Glacial Chasm gives him like a turn because he can play that, sacrifice the Dark Depths, but he can't pay the upkeep because he's 2. You know?
Right.
There's Gamble.
Does he have something he can get here? David has to feel like if he had 10 more life to work with, maybe he could have pulled out of this. You know, he didn't hit the land right when he needed to.
Quick update for you guys. Our third match, what was going to be our backup, Ben Friedman, victorious with his Jeskai deck.
So Ben Friedman moving on to the semifinals. He's going to face the winner of this one. He takes down Thomas Vletchek. So the Miracles deck of Thomas, you're not going to get the cross-ocean Miracles rivalry of Vletchek and Lisette. Lisette makes it to the top 4, but Thomas does not.
Oh. Man, I want to ask Joe how he got by Miracles. How he got by Infect. I got no idea.
Things look a lot better from here for him.
Yeah, that matchup is so hard. So very
We
difficult.
saw Reed Duke and Tom Ross play that match in the finals of the Season 3 Invitational. Reed got a game.
He got game 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was about it, though.
Yeah, then it became a lot less fun. You're going to see a gamble resolve here from David Long in just a second. So, bunch of cards. One of them is going to be gone in just a moment. We'll see which one it's going to be. Roll a 2. Punishing Fire. Well, that one doesn't do anything
Didn't
anyway.
need that one anyway.
Yep.
So he gambles for Chasm here. But, you know, where's this going once again? What's the end game here? If there wasn't, and it's each piece mattered, right? If there wasn't an Absolute Law, Long could have stabilized with Punishing Fire. If there wasn't a Revoker, Long could have played some Mox Diamonds. A lot of things could have gone right here. And now he loses the Glacial Chasm, gets his Forest tapped, and he's
Same
He's
spot.
stuck.
Yeah, same spot.
He can draw for the turn. He can play a land. He can loam, but then so he can. He doesn't have loam in his hand though. I don't think.
Nope.
He may have another gamble. But I don't know what we're gambling for anymore.
Yeah. Well, he's gambling with confidence.
He's got a plan. Let's find out what it is.
A Mazavith.
Well, Konig can tap that with Rashad Port.
Yeah, try to stay alive. I think this is the gamble. Look through my deck and confirm I have no outs, but he's going to take Mazavith.
I was going to take the line that Konig misses the Rashad Port play, but I do not see that one happening.
I don't see Marc missing this. I would be very surprised. Roll a 4. There goes a Mox Diamond. That doesn't do anything
Sure,
anyway.
another card that's been completely blanked.
Yep, there's Maze. Pass the turn back. Marc will untap and draw. And as long as he sees it with the port, play, activate. Yeah, I just don't.
Right away.
I don't imagine him ever missing that. Marc Koenig's going to win this match over David Long, 2-0. Death and Tax is going to get the job done here over lands. He's going to play against Ben Friedman in our semifinals when we do come back.